This is topical issue, biological science, and we are measuring on life. The definition of life has been difficult to place. It was in the 80s that a claim from scientists that the first artificial self-replicating cell had been engineered. I never got to the bottom of this issue, but today my mind has been set rolling, and I think we have to describe this form from the scientific, religious, and from myths we have had. In religion, everything appears to be in animation. And so, is it in paranormal activities, witchcraft, and magic? The Bible talks of the sun and the moon smiting one. Magic, witchcraft, and paranormal talk of the soil, the plants, being in an animatic state. I said paranormal because in most cases when we refer to things, there are things that appear to come from within those other entities in nature that we can't be able to explain. The elements of nature: water, fire, air, and earth, being in their physical form. Science looks at the minerals as non-living things, the mineral part of the geography, and other biological active elements as living things, that is plants and animals. The viruses have had a difficult time people trying to place them, because some viruses behave in one condition as if they are not living, and in another as if they are living. There are viruses that will be mixed in the soil and dried completely, and in that state they appear inert. You can place them as non-living things or totally frozen. And when the right conditions come, they reactivate themselves, and you find they have acquired properties that go with living things. So I think like a virus has been giving people problems, whether placing it in the group of living things or non-living things, though it has some genetic material. The definition of an artificial made cell that could replicate has made many people's mind keep working. The question has been, could life be God's program? A program that God has made that can replicate? This goes with life in all forms. I've been wondering also, those entities that survive in the spirit, could they also be another form of programming of life as per God's program? There was a time when I went through the internet and I was amazed by what one of the people who do genetics had written. He said that if we had to write the material in the human gene, it would take encyclopedia-sized books being arranged one on top of another to pile from here to the moon and back. And I was looking at the ingenuity of God being able to compress such a great information within a very small space. We just finished mapping the gene, human gene, and other genes. Now human beings know how many elements make up a human gene or a plant gene. And with this basic knowledge of just mapping the gene, several things have happened. We've been able to grow, engineer superior trees, fast growing, new species of plants and animals. I would like to talk about what has happened with people being able to take a test gene from a fruit like a mango, and you put it in a plum, and the mango tastes like a plum. It is a mango, it tastes like a plum. You can take the part that controls the taste from a gene in an orange, and for instance, put it in a grape, and the grape will taste like an orange. That is just from mapping the gene. We've had animals that could not be able to interbreed. For instance, naturally, a sheep and a goat can never interbreed. But through genetics, we have an animal like a jeep. We have intercrossed animals like a zebra and a donkey. That is natural, and ended up with a zonkey, a tiger and a lion, and ended up with a tigla, and many other things that could not be imagined. For instance, the people in Israel, the desert in Israel, realized that the chicken were dying because of their feather covering. They went to the lab and removed the gene that controls the growing of feathers. And in that hot area, they have chicken that have got no feathers, so they are not killed by the huge the high temperatures. With the study of genes, we've realized that you can be able to intermix animals that could not grow together, get certain qualities from other animals. Like there have been experiments where they get the part that makes animals in the ocean glow. And they are able to inject that into the genes of a rat as it's forming. And as that rat moves out in the night, in the dark, you will see it glowing, just like the sea animals glow in the dark. It has been possible. With this little knowledge, man have been able to store human and animal embryo for a very long time. I'm talking of a case I had once, I think it was in Israel, where somebody went for intra-fertilization. When they do it, they count the number of the fertilized embryos, and he ordered for some to be preserved in liquid nitrogen. She conceived a child. Later, after almost 12 years, she was reminded that the embryo may have to be destroyed because it had taken long. She said she opted to have the embryo implanted. And 12 years later, a boy who had been conceived first was able to carry the baby brother conceived the same day. 12 years. So it has been possible. It shows that we can be able to shelf and elongate the life, because if those two embryos were conceived at the same time, and this one is being reconceived 12 years later, and the 12-year twin brother, that is what it could have been, is able to carry the baby brother, who is a baby, and he is now a boy, 12 years, almost going to a teenage. So this has been achieved. There has been study of use of stem cells to repair damages in the body. It has worked in many cases. There have been attempts to elongate life and keep the youthfulness in the body using stem cells. And others are predicting that in future, life may be able to be extended for a longer time using the stem cells. With this little knowledge, people have engineered organs in the laboratory, creation of organs like the heart, the liver, ears. Did I see the eye somewhere? Ears, nose, skin. Like those who have bands of the skin, when it's just a small skin and it's fed with nutrients, and you grow a large layer of skin cells, you can be able to graft from skin cells that have grown. That was not possible in the past, because in the past you have to get some skin from another part of that person's body, patch it, and hope that it will not be rejected. But the skin cells that are grown can be manipulated so that they cannot be rejected by the body. This has shown how much we have been able to move scientifically from the study of the gene, just mapping the gene, knowing this one is here, this one is there, that one is there. The surprising thing is that whatever we know about the human gene ranges to about 10%, less than 10%, roughly 10%, but what people can talk with certainty, knowing, understanding, is 5% of the human gene. So it means 90% we don't know. Come to the brain. Somebody once told me that it's about a third that we understand, but as I went through the internet, I came to understand it's almost 10% or 5%. A large portion of our brain functions is not known. They function all right. You're able to see that messages and everything is being relayed. But what is understood is around 5%, 5 to 7%. Following this, I came to realize that God is a gracious God. He does his work marvelously, and we know very little about ourselves. I know God is opening. That's why we're beginning to understand ourselves to the extent that we are understanding ourselves. So we should ask God by having faith, for him to be able to open our brain faculties so that we range from the 5% or the 10% to a higher understanding of how the brain functions and be able to implement this functioning. About the gene, with belief and tests, we may be able to ascend from 5% or 10% therein and get to know a bit more. I think we may be able to understand many things that happen in our bodies, on our bodies, things like that. In pursuit of this, there are things that I talked in the past, and I talked that they were purported because people, I came and read later there, at least there was an acceptance that there have been unidentified flying objects and they are suspect aliens. So it's good now we can talk from the same page. It's not the way one would say and you are told those are just mythical things, imaginations. There is this incident in UFO from the, what do they call it, what hangers file? MUFON hanger files. That talked of a spacecraft that landed near a military base in Britain, and a group of soldiers went, and two soldiers were able to reach one, and one was even able to touch the spacecraft. And when he touched, he felt a message had been imprinted in his mind in base 2. Later, when it was run on computer, it says space exploration for the development of mankind. And I've been looking at it just the way we know ourselves, 5%, the brain almost 5%, the mind, that is. Been thinking that the oceans also, because also as I went, I realized that human beings have mapped something slightly over 5. We know about 5%. 95% of the ocean we don't know, the world ocean. And this is where we live. In fact, when I went through some scientific things, they were saying that we may understand the moon more than we understand our oceans. And our oceans are down here with us. That is around 5%. So 95% of the oceans are known. We say no man's land. We say they are just oceans. For instance, can one be able to tell the number of islands in the ocean? There may be so many. Can one be able to tell the activities that go on in the other 95% of the ocean? Yet, we can be able to utilize those parts as for resources, even for settlement. We can make underwater houses. The earth is, this terrestrial land is just 1/5. 4/5 of this earth is ocean. In fact, if people inhabited will be scattered, it would be like there's no population on. These things we are talking of, overpopulation, pollution, and everything, will be something unknown. The earth will be able to regrow. If there's biomass, you just need to have biomass on earth, it will regrow everything, regenerate itself. There is also space. Space, we have not gone far. We've gone to the moon, at least human beings have tried. For the first time, there are spaceships that have gone out of our solar system, headed towards the neighboring star, Proxima Centauri. So, it is also a very small fraction. We've been building nuclear weapons, we've been doing all those things. It's not bad, they're good for defense. The other time we said you never know. We may need them. But as we progress in other fields, I would concur with that message that was imprinted. Now we can say was imprinted. The other time we would have said that was allegedly imprinted. But now, after some disclosures from the countries that used to say those things don't exist, accepting that they don't understand them, but they may exist, a confirmation. I've thought of also the same way, and for us human beings, the scientists have been doing good. They've been going to space, trying to explore space. Why don't we think of also exploring the oceans, where we know 5%, with a purpose of exploiting the resources in a manner that it will not be destructive, and we shall not be able to pollute, and even settling. The earth used to be a small place. People discovered America, they settled. Though that time we were very destructive. We go where the forests are, we cut the forest. But now that we know about nature, there have been designs of underwater houses. Some countries, people have been fighting for small spaces on earth. This is our country, a small space. Everybody is fighting for that space. 4/5 of the earth is water, and there may be islands. Why can't we think of finding those things? We agree. Those places we have been calling no man's land. If we can be able to find where there are islands, where there are things like that, or where people can be able to, those spaces where people have been fighting for terrestrial land, we can have a big country where you have no space. You have a big country in the ocean. Another one has a big country in the ocean. You don't have to fight over the small places. These small places becomes the headquarters. We should think in terms of that for our other development, because once we learn how to live in water or on water or under, depending on the depth, because it depends on the depth and the pressure of the water. There are places you have to be submerged at a certain level, just like a submarine. You can build your villages there. There are places where if the pressure is not so high and where you know you will not destroy nature, you can be able to build at the bottom. And there are other places you can build floating houses at the top. Reduce the pressure from the terrestrial land. This is possible. Because if you acquire such a skills, and there are moons like Europa, is Europa for Jupiter or Saturn? They are going around Jupiter, I think, which people think is a water moon, having more water than that on Earth. If one can find that everything is right, then we can have bases there. You go and float your base there, and people operate to help human being to be able to explore further, be able to explore a planet like Jupiter that appears to be also radiating its own energy, just like a small sun. And it will even make it easier for further exploration to other places. So, we should think along those lines. Space exploration for the change, for the development of mankind. Ocean exploration for the development of mankind. Genetic exploration for understanding and development of mankind. Our mental faculties, brain, get to understand more for development and progress of mankind. Faith, above all, for interaction and for allowing God to open other faculties that we don't know within us so that we can be able to understand ourselves better. I was talking of life, and we've seen that God has made life in many forms in a complicated manner. He's written his programs and has given us instructions. Life is complex. but we are barely scratching the top of getting to start understanding what life is outside the Bible. We know we were created, but in these tiny forms where you hear that people can be able to write a program or chemically and be able to get some entities to appear to be living and giving, let me say, regenerating, forming another artificial cell like that one, we have come to understand more about life, and through the spiritual ways and other ways, God will expand us. But that advice from what was imprinted in that scientist's mind, which was run on the computer, we should consider it seriously. Space exploration, the mental space, the genetic space, the ocean space, interstellar space, interplanetary space, for the progress of mankind. That's my take for today.